December 26th, 1900, the day after Christmas. In the cruelest waters of the North Atlantic, a small supply vessel, the Hesperus, pushed steadily toward the shore. Her crew stared at the lonely tower rising on the horizon, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, off the western edge of Scotland, cut off from the rest of the world. Nothing but a cluster of jagged rock. By rights, this lighthouse should have been a beacon, saving hundreds of ships from those black waters. Its light should have cut through the night. But that day, it was silent, a deadly silence. The light of the lighthouse had not been seen for 11 days. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper aboard the ship, would later describe that moment as the worst feeling of his life. Because Moore knew this island well, he had served here. He knew the life on this rock. And now something was wrong, deeply wrong. Under normal circumstances, the three keepers on the island would have stirred the moment they spotted a ship in the distance. A flag would wave, a flare would rise, or at the very least, a human figure would appear on the gallery. But that day, there was nothing, no movement, no light. Not a single sign of life, only the wind, and the sharp, screaming cry of the waves breaking against the rocks. Moore and two crewmen defied the sea, almost daring death itself, and fought their way ashore. They climbed over the rocks. When they reached the main door of the lighthouse, the sight waiting for them would begin one of the most famous and most chilling disappearances in history. The main door was locked from the outside, but the only sound from within was the wind, moaning through the empty rooms. There was no one inside. Three men of the sea had been erased from this world, without leaving a single trace. What makes mysteries truly terrifying is often how ordinary their beginnings are. The Flannan Isles were exactly that. This was a place no one would ever want to live. Bare rock, brutal winds, an endless solitude, and in every direction, a vast ocean waiting to swallow you whole. Three men served at the lighthouse. Principal keeper, James Duckett. Second keeper, Thomas Marshall. And assistant, Donald MacArthur. Their duties were simple. Keep the light burning, record the weather, and wait. Wait endlessly. After the incident, investigators recovered the official logs kept at the lighthouse. Up until the 12th of December, everything was completely normal. Standard weather reports, standard daily work. But the entries for the 13th, 14th, and 15th of December changed the direction of the story. According to the logs, a violent storm began on the 13th. Thomas Marshall wrote in that day's entry, "The wind is like nothing I have seen in 20 years. The sea has become something never witnessed here before." On the 15th of December, the storm reached its peak, and the final entry, written in James Duckett's own hand, became one of the most haunting lines ever recorded. Storm ended, sea calm, everything in order. God is over all. This was the last message to come from the island, and then for 11 days, silence. And then came that terrible discovery when Moore opened the door on the 26th of December. But years later, other claims began to circulate beyond these official logs. According to some sources, on the final pages of the journal, there were additions that never made it into the official record. One of them read, "MacArthur is crying." Donald MacArthur, a man known for his hard temper, who had spent his years at sea, the kind of man who would never even think of weeping. The claim that he had been crying deepened the psychological weight of the event. Historians still argue over whether these extra notes were real. Perhaps they were invented later. But even so, they were enough to cast a dark, unsolvable shadow over this story. When Joseph Moore began to search the interior, he expected the scene of a battle or the signs of a massacre. But what he found was the exact opposite. At first glance, everything was in order, but small details sometimes tell the most terrifying stories. The kitchen table had been set, ready for a meal. Pieces of meat, salt cellars, dishes, all in their place. The clocks inside had stopped. The beds had not been slept in, and there was no blood, no sign of struggle, no overturned furniture, nothing thrown aside. It was as if three men sitting at the table in that very moment had suddenly risen, walked out the door, and never returned. And then, Moore noticed the most crucial detail of all, the row of hooks in the corridor where the keepers hung their oilskins, their storm coats. Of the three oilskins, only two were hanging there. James Duckett's and Thomas Marshall's coats were in their place, but Donald MacArthur's oilskin was still inside, on its hook. He had left it behind. This single detail was enough to destroy the official storm accident theory on its own. Investigators went to the western side of the island, to the landing point, 110 meters from the lighthouse. There they found things stranger still. A crane system had been hurled against rocks 30 meters high and smashed apart. Iron boxes had been torn to pieces. Storm damage reached all the way to the very top of the cliffs. This pointed to an abnormally high level of water. A theory was put forward. Perhaps a giant wave came. The men went out to save the equipment on the western side, and the wave swept them away. It seemed logical, but the logic fell apart right here. First, by the lighthouse's strict rules, it was absolutely forbidden for all three keepers to go outside at the same time, especially during a storm. One man always had to remain inside. Second, and most importantly, in the middle of the Atlantic, in December. During a violent storm, no seaman leaves his oilskin behind before heading out to sea, not under any circumstances. MacArthur had left his coat behind. This suggested that there was no rush for him to go out, or that he had not gone out willingly. So what had happened that night inside the lighthouse? Why was MacArthur crying? And why did all three go out into that storm? As the years passed, the theories multiplied. Some spoke of sea monsters. Some claimed a foreign ship had come and taken them. Some even suggested that MacArthur had gone mad, killed the other two, and then thrown himself into the sea. But no theory could explain that oilskin left hanging inside, and that neatly set dinner table. And the most disturbing truth still remained. Nowhere on the shore, nowhere at sea, nowhere on earth, was a single trace of those three men ever found. The ocean had swallowed them and left not even a mark. Today, 123 years have passed. The Flannan Isles are still there. The rocks the same, the wind the same, the ocean the same. The lighthouse is automated now. It no longer needs a human touch, and the official explanation is perfectly simple. During a violent storm, the keepers who had gone outside while on duty were swept away and drowned by an unexpected giant wave. The case was closed, but we know that the closing of a case does not mean a mystery has ended, because within this story, there are wounds that never close. Why did all three break the rule and go outside? Why was the oilskin left behind? And why was no body ever found? Perhaps there really was a giant wave. Perhaps the human mind in that boundless solitude slowly cracked and at some point crossed the limit of what it could endure. Or perhaps something else happened. Something history never told us. Something that never made it into the records. We do not know, and we probably never will. Because sometimes the ocean swallows not only men, but the truth itself. And now, I ask you, listening to this story on the other side of the screen. If, when Joseph Moore opened that door, there was truly no one inside, and if the storm outside was so violent that not a single step could be taken, then the light burning one last time, who put it out?